Mimi, machst du mal dem Papa den Gitarrensound brutal, bitte?
Mach ich.
Boys and girls, I'm back, and today I want to do what I love doing the most. Was that correct English? I don't know. But I love checking out high-gain guitar amplifiers, just like you. Okay, today we will hopefully learn something about different voicings and different distortion characteristics of different preamps. Because I'm checking out the Synergy guitar system. Have you heard about that? It is this module-based tube amp system. And there are a lot of different modules from companies like Dietzel, Engl, Bogner, Friedman, Soldano that you can buy for this system. Very, very interesting. And you know what? The cool people at Synergy have sent me all, buckle up, all their high gain modules. That's a lot, I think 12 or something. I got them all, including one module that is being released today. You can already see it here on the right side. So this is the first time you can hear this module, another high gain module. Those are too many modules for one video, but I will probably show them all sooner or later. But today in this video, I want to do three things. First of all, I want to find out how good this system sounds, how good the preamps are. And I want to compare this Engl Savage module designed by Engl that you can see here on the left side to my original Engl Savage 60 from the 90s that I know very well and that I love. After that, I will show you a brand new model. You can see it on the right side here, and that is a so-called 2CP module, which is Synergy's take on the legendary Mesa Boogie Mark II C Plus amp that has been used by Metallica, I think on Master of Puppets and elsewhere, and by Petrucci. And yeah, but I don't care who used it. I just want to find out how cool it is or not. And if you can make some decent juga juga with it today. The third thing I want to do is I want to show you my favorite module so far. A module I really fell in love with. So, a lot to check out, a lot to do. Let's get started. Here we go. Alrighty, let me show you today's rig. As usual, I'm playing my Fernandez Ravel guitar with EMG pickups. And we are playing the Synergy preamp. We're going right into the preamp. So this is the 19-inch rack version that can load and hold two modules, as you can see. Each module, and that is really cool, actually has two channels. So you can switch between one and another channel here on the Engl. And over here, same thing. So you get 4 channels in one rack unit. And one thing that is even smarter is that you can hook up this preamp with your existing tube amplifier with the so-called 4-cable method. I'm not gonna explain it in detail, but it basically means that you can keep on playing your tube amplifier like this Engl Savage amp, and you are simply adding 4 channels. So you can have your Engl channel and then you can add whatever, 2 Dietzel channels and 2 Bogner or whatever channels. Really, really cool. Instead of buying another amp, you're just buying new channels for your amp. That means we are playing all those preamps here through the power amp of the Savage 60. And on the preamp here, I can switch between those 4 channels I have here, but I can also switch to playing just the Engl Savage. And this is where we start right now. There's no boost. We're not playing any tube screamer or any boost in this video. It's only the preamps. We're going down there with the signal into my live room where I have 2 4x12 cabs connected. I'm miking 2 vintage 30 speakers in a Mesa Boogie cab. They are from 2002, so they sound great. One is mic'd with an SM57, pretty standard. The other one is mic'd with a biodynamic M160. And we start by playing the Engl Savage, so we hear what the amp sounds like. Here we go. All right, so let's switch to the Synergy module. Here we go. Back to the amp. First of all, this is really close. The distortion, to me, it sounds exactly the same. And it feels exactly the same. There's the module. Amp. The voicing is slightly different though. The amp sounds a little thinner and a little more mid-focused. Go to the module. You hear that? So the amp is a little more twangy and the module is a little fuller and thicker sounding. More low end. But this is really damn close, and especially the distortion just sounds the same. So this is a Savage to me. It is a Savage. One thing that surprised me though is that the settings are quite different. Now they sound the same, but the settings are really different. You see, the bass on the amp is cranked, but I have quite some headroom on the treble. And here it's the opposite. This is the bass. It's maybe at 10 o'clock. So there's a lot more low end in the module, but the highs, the treble is already cranked. So let's just listen to the low end of the module. So it can sound a lot thicker than the amp, if you want that. But on the amp, on the power amp, you have this button here, the depth, which will add a lot of low end to the power amp. And with the Synergy system, you are only getting the preamp and not the original power amp of the Savage. So maybe the guys at Engl voiced this one a little darker and a little fuller because they knew you might not have that depth feature. So this has all the low end you need built in to the preamp. Maybe. I have to ask them, I don't know. Because it sounds a lot fuller than the amp if we just compare the preamps. On the other hand, the module is a little darker sounding, so the treble is already cranked, which is no problem with a power amp like the Savage, because you have the presence control here, which can go a lot more extreme. So for this module, you really want an open and airy sounding power amp. By the way, that's why I'm not using the Synergy power amp. I really like open and airy sounding power amps, especially with the presence cranked, you know, that just gives the right amount of high-end rattle to metal guitar tones. I just like that. So I'm not a fan of darker voiced power amps. That's not a matter of quality, but the Synergy power amp that they also sent me sounds a little too dark and a little too closed for my taste. So that's why I'm using the Engl in this example. And when we check out the other modules, you will see that an open sounding power amp is something that is really, really helpful when you want to sound brutal. It sounds great. It simply sounds great. This is very close to the original. It's voiced a little darker, but that actually makes it a lot more flexible because you can add more low end if you want, and you don't depend on the power amp. The Engl Savage is a legendary preamp, and it's still one of the most modern sounding preamps, tight and focused and really clean, but also like kind of nasty. It's a preamp that I've been using on countless records, and it's an industry standard. So I can only say Engl and Synergy have done a good job of bringing that into this rack unit. If you're looking for that Engl tone, try the Savage module. Let's move on. Now let's check out Synergy's take on the Mesa Boogie Mark II C+. Right out of the box, it sounds like this. Very different, right? Very different type of distortion. It feels, or let's talk, there's the distortion and then we have the frequency spectrum. Both are very different. Let's talk about the frequency spectrum first because that's easier to understand. This is very, very mid-forward. Honky. Gaw, 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 gaw. Those mids are beautiful, but they are overpowering the other frequencies. It's quite dark sounding. So we need more highs. The problem is that the passive EQ on this module is pretty much useless. Actually, the treble is already cranked, and that is the only band that is actually doing something. Let's have a listen to the treble. Now middle. I don't hear a difference. Bass. And so on. The EQ is useless. I don't need it. But there's something else we can do. You remember what I said about power amps? Open sounding power amps. Hey, let's just crank the presence on the Engl power amp. Let's see what happens. And that sounds so much better, right? Now you can hear how beautiful those mids are, but they're no longer overpowering the high end of the tone. Let's try the depth knob. A little too much, but nice. So this module really needs an open sounding power amp with the presence cranked so it can shine. And now let's talk about the distortion. The distortion it just feels a lot slower compared to the Savage, but it sounds really sophisticated, really complex, and really creamy. I hate that word, but it's true. That just sounds great. And you will hear if you play something like this. And now we go back to the Engl. This sounds a little hard, right? Because that Engl distortion is really made for this. And the MESA Boogie Mark II distortion is just, I mean, it's not as fast and not as tight and maybe not as brutal, but it's very complex and it's very beautiful. Nice, well done. So this is a great distortion. The only problem, the only thing that needs to be shaped is the frequency response. Because, yeah, right out of the box, if you don't fully crank your present, it just sounds a little bit muffled and too dark and too indirect. But that can be fixed because there's another feature, a very, very important and crucial feature of that preamp, and that is the graphic EQ. I also remember like having that on the MESA Boogie Studio preamp, and everybody back then was using it in the same way, V-shaped, you know, to scoop the mids, to boost the low end, and to boost the highs. So that's how you use that MESA Boogie graphic EQ. And let me tell you, it is very, very powerful. So, you know, the passive EQ is not doing much or not doing anything, but that graphic EQ is doing a lot. So let me just turn it on in a pretty extreme setting. Remember, we're not using a boost. This sounds brutal. Let me just turn off the EQ so you remember how extreme it is. I love that combination. You know, that rather traditional creamy distortion that feels a little slow when you play it compared to a modern design like the Savage, combined with an extreme EQ setting that gives you a modern metal kind of frequency response, you know. That combination is very interesting. And this is a pretty extreme setting, so you can do anything in between. What really speaks for this kind of distortion is that even with this extreme EQ settings, with the highs boosted and the lows boosted, nothing sounds hard or harsh, you know? Nice overtones, nice compression. But for some reason, still tight enough for... So from the lowest lows to the highest highs, it always stays beautiful, complex, and sophisticated. What a great distortion. So if you're looking for a more unique tone, like not the typical super tight high gain tone, if you like a little more traditional distortion, but still want to sound modern, check this module out. Here's something I have to criticize. You know, in German we call this Wurstfinger, you know, sausage fingers. So with my fingers, it's almost impossible to dial in the damn graphic EQ. This is just 1 millimeter. You see how extreme it is. Dear people at Synergy, just get rid of the other EQ. I don't need it. It doesn't make any difference. And make the graphic EQ bigger. Because right now it's a pain in the ass to dial it in. That's why I had to call for my daughter, you know. But what a great sound. I like both. I like the extreme setting with the graphic EQ. But I also like the cranked presence on the power amp. Beautiful. Well done. Hats off. What a great sounding module. And now I want to show you my favorite. Right now that's my favorite. And that is this one. The Bogner Überschall module. And you know the cool thing is you can even hot swap those modules. Let me just do that right now. So I remove the Mark II. And put in the Bogner. No? That's it. Very easy. Let's go to the red channel because red is more brutal, right? Let me just dial it in. Let's start with something called pre-EQ. It's also very hard to read. It's all kind of flimsy, you know. Sounds great, but it's a little pre-EQ. So let's see what this does. Okay, so this is boosting the highs or upper frequencies before the distortion. Maybe even remove some low end to make it tighter, to make it more aggressive. Kind of like what a Tube Screamer is doing. Already much better. This one is called Boost. I hope you can see it. And I'm pretty sure 99% of all guitarists would use this setting because it sounds much better than this. No, it's just louder. Listen to the frequencies. This actually sounds louder, yes, but more honky. Quack, quack, quack. If we want a brutal and modern sound, we should use the other setting. Cold and brutal. Oh, we still got the presence of the power amp cranked. But it actually helps the module because this is too dark. But let's try using the EQ of the module first instead. So we need more highs, right? We need them all. Let's check out how much low end we can get. Nice. A very, very musical and usable EQ. Even if you crank the mids, you get a nice 1K genty twang. Or you can scoop. Let's just keep it in the middle. Now we don't need to crank the presence. This is bright enough. Such a thick distortion. Not as clean as the Savage. How much distortion do we have? A lot! This is such a full sounding and also beautiful sounding preamp. It's more modern. The distortion is more modern than the Mark II distortion, but it's equally beautiful in a way and complex and nice, just faster sounding. There's just nothing wrong with this tone, right? Let's go back to the Engl. Huge difference, right? So the Engl is really mid-focused in comparison, right? The Bogner seems to have more hi-fi bandwidth. This is the Engl. I mean, this will easily cut through in any mix, you know, and sit there easily because of that mid-bite. But it doesn't have the fullness and the beauty of the Bogner module. I have to say that. But you know, that's why you want many, many different amps and many different preamps, because they're all great and they all have their places, so to say. So the Engl is great for anything that's supposed to sound clean yet brutal and aggressive. The Bogner is more beautiful, lush, full sounding, maybe a little more difficult to mix because there's a lot more lower mids and bass going into the distortion. It's not that clean. But that could also be controlled by adding a tube screamer. Fucking amazing. What a nice distortion. Anyway, that's only half the module because there is another channel. So let's check out the other channel. I think it's already dialed in. Let's see what happens. So this is the green channel of the Überschall. goes into the same direction, sounds very expensive and very nice, but a little more Marshall crunchy or something. It is not as compressed. It's more some kind of rock and roll distortion. Great note separation, same quality, it just sounds less compressed and less metal. Fuck off, this sounds great. Those two channels alone, damn. Alright, so let me sum it up. This sounds fantastic, right? So this is a great preamp, and I think it's the easiest and maybe most affordable way to add a lot of new guitar tones either to your studio setup or to your existing guitar rig. Like I said, with that 4-cable method, you can still play your amp and then switch to the other modules, to the other channels. And adding 4 new channels to your amp, that sounds really, really sexy. And you know, choose whatever you want. So far, it all sounded great. I really do recommend the Bogner and the new 2CP, but you know, the Engl is also nice. 2 great preamps. It depends on what you like or not. What do I have to criticize? I'm not in love with the Synergy Power Amp. I know it's a compromise because it has to work with all the different modules from clean to high gain, but for my taste, it sounded a little too dark, a little too muffled, and had a certain hardness as well. I like open sounding power amps, so I preferred the Engl power amp. I would also prefer something like a rectifier power amp, something like that. It's just a little too dark for my taste, but you get whatever you want, depends on your taste. Yeah, everything here is really small, so it's not a lot of fun to dial in those tones, I have to say, especially on the graphic EQ. That's a pain in the ass. But you know, I have kids, you know, I have those sausage fingers, you know, Wurstfinger. I can't do that, but I have kids, so they will do that for me. I'm just kidding, you know, no labor for the kids. I'm just kidding. Yeah, but it's all a little flimsy. I know they can't change that. If you want to put 2 channels into 1 module, of course, it's a compromise. You don't have a lot of space. It's not like this, you know. I get it. One last point I want to criticize is that if you don't have their floorboard, or if you don't have a MIDI floorboard, you've seen me, you can only switch through the channels. Like this is the amp, then I have the 2 Engl channels, and then I have the 2 Bogner channels. But I cannot go from this Bogner back to the Engl or something like this. So I would prefer a dedicated switch on each channel so I can directly switch to that channel. That is something that annoys me. If I just want to toggle between 2 channels in the studio, that's something I don't like. Maybe they can add this in the future. Again, if you have the floorboard, of course, you can switch directly to whatever channel you want. Yeah, I have to say, I'm pretty impressed. So if you don't own 75 tube amps like me, and you want to get some great tones either for live playing or for studio work, you should have a look at this system and you should check out all the different options. The cool thing is that once you have invested in something like this, it gets really cheap in comparison to add some new tones, you know, because you just have to buy 1 model and you don't have to buy an entire amp. Buying amps is very sexy though. I get it. I love buying amps. So if it's about what's more sexy, then yeah, it's not. It's also not really looking that beautiful. I mean, the Engl just looks a lot better, right? It's not beautiful. It's flimsy, but fuck, it sounds great. What can you do? All right, that's what was all I had to say about this system today. You let me know which modules you want me to check out in the future. I have them all here, all the high gain modules. And I think I will also do a little reamping video where I reamp the same riff through all the high gain modules, so you can hear them in comparison. And maybe you can even download the files. What about that? Next time. Right. Leave a comment. Tell me what you want. Anyway, if you want to download those files later, you should already subscribe to my email list. There's a link below, link to my email list. If you join there, you will get a lot of free stuff on my Discord channel, on that Discord channel, you can meet, I think, 2,500 other people who like to talk about guitars, metal, studio work, whatever. Join us there. Sell your soul to the devil. Click that link below. Sign up to my email list. You get some free stuff. You meet some nice people. Sometimes you get exclusive videos. And in case I do the reamping session with all the modules, you will get those files as well. So another reason to subscribe. I see you there. All right. You should also subscribe to this channel, right? And ring the bell so you don't miss any further videos about Synergy or about something else. So that was a lovely expedition, a lovely journey into distortion land, right? And it's just the start of it, because I will check out the other modules as well, at least the ones that sound good. We will have a lot of fun, my friends. That's all for today. I love you all. I see you in hell, motherfuckers. Bye-bye.